environmental issue or a wreck or something like that where we have to go respond to that during the day, but most of our street sweeping is scheduled to be done at night. Right.
You ready?
Yep, we're ready.
Good evening again, and welcome
Thank
to the 25th of June workshop for the Crestview City Council. And I ask again at this time if you have any electronic devices that you would silence them. And if you'd like to speak to us on any topic this evening, we do have little yellow cards outside the doorway there, and you can just fill one out, give it to the city clerk, and it'll get down to me. I would like to call on a different Boy Scout to come up and lead us in the pledge for this meeting. Do I have a volunteer out there? A different one this time. Nobody?
Be brave. Be brave, Scouts.
All right, come on up here. There you go. Please stand and join in the pledge. We'll wait till you get up here. Thank you, young man. What's your name?
Mitchell Hartster.
Mitchell, thank you.
You ought to get a merit badge for public speaking.
They'll get a merit badge just for sitting through our meetings. Thank you all for coming, though. If you would, gentlemen, please sign in. No, I'll take that back. The workshop, there's no reason to sign in because we don't vote. So we will just acknowledge that all of our city council members are present, as well as the mayor, city clerk, city attorney, and our department heads. Gentlemen, any objections to the agenda that we have? If not, it's been approved unanimously, and we'll call from the public. If you have anything to discuss that's on tonight's agenda, this would be the time that you come in front of the city council, be recognized, and share your views with us. Anybody like to talk to us on tonight's agenda? There's always a second opportunity. This is, right now, anything we're going to take up. If you want to try to talk to us ahead of time, and then later on, you can talk to us after the fact. So I don't see anybody this time. Yes, I do. Young man, come on up. You would give us your name and address and what you'd like to tell us.
My name is Justin Walker, and I am here to talk about the overcrowding of schools.
Okay, would you move just a little bit closer to the mic if you would? That's good. Okay.
For example, last year and the year before that, a teacher is only supposed to have 16 to 19 per class, and I had 24 for one teacher.
Okay. That's a good point. You're talking to a former teacher. I was teaching when the Florida State Legislature passed that statute, and it seems like we've got to the point where we kind of ignore that, aren't we? But my advice to you would have to be is you have to address that to the school board. You know, in bigger cities, the cities run the schools, but in Crestview, the county district, the school district runs the schools, not the city of Crestview. So my recommendation with you is take this experience of talking in front of the government body and go in front of the next school board meeting and tell them the same thing, because we can't really do anything about it, but we can point you in the right direction.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right, thank you. No other comments? All right, thank you so much. Okay, the primary purpose we met tonight was to discuss a report we got back from the Institute for Senior Professionals, which was an organization that our former chief of police asked to investigate the homelessness in Crestview. Now, we've examined this before. In fact, I spent a whole year examining it. And I think that we did a pretty good job of educating ourselves and educating the public, and that's kind of where it stopped. We never really were able to put anything to effect, and that's no, I don't think it's anybody's fault. I think that we didn't have the wherewithal to now to execute a plan. So this ISP, as I'll call them, was called in to evaluate and make recommendations to us. And that's exactly what they did. And tonight, we're going to share their findings amongst ourselves and to you and the public and their recommendations. Now, I'll start off by saying, as soon as I get to the right thing, that they made many recommendations, but they put some in phase 1 and some in phase 2, recognizing the fact that you can't get to phase 2 unless you can get through phase 1. And phase 1 should be the things that you could do that maybe won't cost a lot of money or tie up a lot of resources. So tonight we're going to really focus on the suggestions on the phase 1 and see how the council feels and how the public feels about what direction we should go. And ordinarily, when we have somebody do a presentation, I ask that we hold our questions until the end, so we don't always interrupt the people because they're focused on what they want to do. Tonight's a little bit different because I'm going to go to the presentation. So you've got free-for-all here to interrupt me at any time and say or ask anything you want. That's anybody on the staff or the elected officials. And so, so like I said, our goal tonight is to weed through the phase 1 suggestions and determine what we can or maybe what we can't do, and also to develop a timetable. If we can do something, when can we do it? Let me add just one other thing too, is that the last time we had a workshop, the business partners, our business partners, weren't well engaged because the word didn't get out properly. And again, I'm not going to sit up here and point fingers why it didn't, but it didn't. And so I think it was a pretty good campaign. The chamber put a blast out, Main Street put a blast out, and that was to make sure that the business owners could come in and share their thoughts with us also. The first recommendation they made, which is where we kind of dropped the ball, no, I'm not going to say we. I dropped the ball because I had a vision of forming a coalition, but I didn't have the wherewithal to do it myself. And what's really neat about the recommendation for the ISP is they're saying you really can't do it by yourself. You really have to go out there into the community and get the volunteers to form the coalition and then step back and let them run it. And so trying to say who can I get, or trying to point somebody just doesn't work. And so their first recommendation is establish an ad hoc voluntary homeless affairs coalition under the office of the mayor and the city council, and consisting of representatives from private, nonprofit, faith-based, and government stakeholders to continually monitor, report, and provide advice for the management and reduction of homelessness. Okay? So the key element there was that although the city council and the mayor can be driving forces, it's not a committee we're going to run. Okay? It'll be a community committee, coalition. And so the first phase, I'm going to go each one of these, and then I'm going to turn it over to our interim police chief to talk about the suggestions made to our police department, and then I'll summarize and take any comments that we have. The second suggestion was accepting and enhancing the city's relationship with the homelessness and housing alliance, Okaloosa and Walton counties. And we did that last time. We established a relationship that we didn't, I keep on saying we, I was deeply involved in that. I established a relationship, and because we never had a coalition, we never really followed through with a good relationship with HHA, which is home-based in Fort Walton Beach. Sarah Yevelton, who is the chair of that group, is a fantastic and very knowledgeable individual. I've dealt with her several times now. And so what we would have to do is reestablish that relationship and say, how can you help us? And with the permission of the mayor and my fellow councilman, I'd be willing to go back down and talk to Sarah and do that because I've dealt with her before. Anybody have any problem with my doing that?
I was going to suggest that.
Well, good. You're a mind reader, Joe. This one will be a little bit of a challenge, but again, it's something we don't have to do by ourselves. Developing and implementing a strategic plan for homeless management with HHA's assistance. I'm familiar with, I think most of us are familiar with strategic plans, but we haven't done a real good job as a city doing that. But for doing it for the homelessness, if we work with Sarah and the coalition, that would be the first thing you want to do. You don't want to go into a program without knowing what you're doing. So you sit down, develop a strategic plan. You know, what's your vision, mission, your goals, how you're going to achieve them. And so that's a pretty good recommendation by the ISP. Encouraging the Homeless Affairs Coalition to apply for funding related projects. Again, something we would need help with because many of us don't have experience in writing grants. Now, we have somebody in the audience today, this evening, Ann Sprague, that I believe has written grants before and gotten them for cash. And Sarah certainly has done them. And the HUD one, I looked at the HUD one, whew, you know, anytime you're dealing with government grants, you know, you better be prepared. And so this, I think this group could work, would certainly work with Ann, who's done it before, and Sarah, and apply for grants, which would be some kind of external funding. Supporting a homeless outreach team called HOT by generating necessary ordinances to aid the police. So that's, if you listen to that, that's kind of two-sided. The police would do something on a program called HOT, but in the commander, Grant will explain that in a minute. But it doesn't do a whole lot of good if we haven't supported them by passing ordinances. The last time we asked that question, we were told we really weren't sure what ordinances they needed. And so maybe with a little exploration, we can get to the point where we determine what we can do. Because the worst thing you can do is come up and create an ordinance, then you can't enforce it. And then you just have egg on your face. And that was the concern before. Many cities have passed ordinances, you can't do this, you can't do that. And then somebody takes them to court and they say, well, you can't do that, you're harassing people or whatever. So that would be a coordination between the city council and the coalition and the police department. And then the last one, which I think will be a fairly tough challenge, and I'm going to call on my fellow councilmen to advise me here, establishing a day labor center in downtown to make homeless and at-risk homeless workers available for employment. Great idea. I saw that happen when we were living in Tampa. Salvation Army had the center there, and vans actually went to the center every day and picked up people to go to different work projects. And everybody knew that the people were available there for day labor, and then they would bring them back in the afternoon. So I know it's a great idea. During this meeting, when ISP briefed me and the mayor, they told us something I didn't know, because I've only lived here for 8 years, and that is we had one previously. So could somebody up here address that to me, what we had and why we don't have it? Anybody up here know about it besides the mayor? You know about it, don't you? Mayor Cato?
Oh, yes.
Anybody else know anything about it?
I never saw anybody.
Can you comment on it, or do you
Later.
later? Okay, Mayor, would you like to comment on it?
I'm not really, several years ago, so I'm not, I don't really know about the inner workings of how it was. I just know that there was a spot on the downtown Main Street that workers could show up, homeless could show up each day, and there was a group that, I think about 1 or 2 men that operated this service. And if they had jobs available that day, like I get calls a lot for people needing, the elderly needing yard work done and taken care of, that sort of thing. And we could pass that on to those people running that group and see if we get volunteers, pick them up and take them out there. Now, for any kind of pay, that would be between the person being serviced there and the person who would be hiring them. We would not be involved in setting a fee or anything like that. But that's, if I'm not mistaken, that's sort of the way it was happening.
So it wasn't Job Corps?
No, it was
a-
not.
You don't know who, was it a
was-
church, charity?
And I
No,
don't-
Go ahead, Mr.
I don't think so.
Mr. President, it was a gentleman, it was at the Fred Astaire building now located there. And they had members who were staying there, and they would go out for work based on somebody bringing a requirement there for work and thing, and the homeless did stay there at that facility when it was there at that time.
Who funded that? I mean, the building and the person doing the coordinating?
Miss Teresa, thank you. Yeah,
Oh, okay. Well, I'm familiar with that organization. I didn't know they were ones doing it, Harvest Ministries.
yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Well, I'm familiar with that. Okay. I didn't know they were doing that, but I knew they were doing other good things. Okay, at this point, I'd like to call on Commander Grant to let us know about the HOT program and the, maybe the Historic District Patrol Officer program you're working on.
Yeah, it's hot. We had 4 items. The first one we had was implementing the HOT program as well as accepting advice offered by the Fort Walton Beach Police Department. We've contacted Fort Walton, and due to some staffing issues there, they're no longer really active and never actually had the HOT program in place. They were basically using their own program. What we've done is we've solicited through a couple agencies in the state of Florida, Plantation Police Department, Pinellas Park PD, and Hollywood PD are all accredited agencies who are actually using the HOT program. We've gotten policies from them to implement those policies into our policy, how to deal with the homeless. And one of the other suggestions is they want us to build us a database where we can identify each homeless person in the area and basically their situation. We're able to do that in a new computer system, and have already started that at this time, and got some documented people in there at this time. Gives you their information about what they're doing, where they're at, a picture, and some personal data information like that. So that's working so far.
Let me ask you this on the data files. Are we duplicating efforts? Is this something that you could coordinate with the cash program? And I believe that you maintain a database, do you not? Would that help out if you worked with cash on that?
Yeah, definitely. Anybody that we can work with, and that's another thing we're going to do is contact the local agencies. I know there's one in Fort Walton, and we have one here in town. Is to maybe set up some monthly meetings between the officer that we're going to put downtown, so we can coordinate with each other. So whatever we're doing works with what they're doing, and what they're doing works with what we're doing.
Okay. And the patrol officer?
We, according to our policy, we have to advertise that position. We've done that, and hopefully within about 2 weeks, we'll have that position filled, probably shorter than that. And I've talked to Chief Holland today, and he's offered an office over at the fire department for our downtown substation.
So this will be a new position, is that what you're saying?
No, sir, we're just going to utilize a position we already have.
And foot or bicycle?
It's going to start out at foot. There's some stipulations for the bicycle patrol. We're actually doing some curriculum now, so we can train the guy on the bicycle. So probably within about the first month, we'll have him on bikes.
The hours?
We're going to study. I talked to a couple people downtown, and they like about the 10 to 6 time frame.
Okay. Any other comments?
No.
All right, thank you. Gentlemen, any comments or questions at this point? Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Fairclough.
The points you just went through,
Mm-hmm.
let me find it. Developing and implementing a strategic plan for homeless management. I thought about that. If the police department, I don't know if you have a program already in your computer system or whatever, but if you could make personal contact with these guys and get their names and an address if they have one, date of birth, description, that sort of stuff, criminal history, all that sort of stuff. The material that I read, at best guess, the numbers that were given are just best estimates. And we really don't know how many we have. So if our police officers, if they make personal contacts on the street with these guys, put them in the computer with as much information as they can get, their aliases and everything, then if they make contact with them again, or if Fort Walton makes contact with them, we can kind of keep up with their traveling, and won't have to put them in there twice. Then after we've done it a few months, we can better determine how many we're dealing with.
What you're saying is true, and I hate to put you on the spot, but if you'd come up, please, because that's exactly what Ann does, so you can follow them from city to city, but they're very, very shy. When you try to count them, they don't really want to show up. And what Ann will be able to tell you is that when she has the count, it never lines up with the amount of people she sees over there in the house.
I
And
can
how you
tell
see so
you-
many more people. So why don't you share with us how you try to track them and
Well,
why it's
if I
difficult?
may, Mr. President, one more part, and I'm sorry for holding you up, but
It's okay.
everybody you see out there asking for help, asking for money, not every one of them's telling the truth on their signs. As law enforcement officers of past times, there's that one or two that we dealt with all the time. I know where their houses are, and I know they're not veterans, but they advertise on their little cardboard signs that they are. Now, true, that's very few. All of them are not like that. I understand that. But first of all, money to help is a problem. If we can't the city can't pay to have an apartment building built for homeless. Some of them are not homeless. Some of them want to be homeless. And I guess you're finding this kind of stuff out.
Oh, yes, sir. There are some that choose that
Ann,
lifestyle.
would you please just identify yourself and
Yes.
address for the record?
Ann Sprague. Do you need my address?
Yes, please.
1086 Highway C4A, Baker. But I'm in Crestview every day working with the homeless. I can tell you between July 1st, 2017 and June 1st of 2018, we did intakes on 221 different individuals. Now, that's just the ones that we find and that come to us. There are many who do not. Many of the ones who are causing the problems on Main Street, we never see. So, yes, some of them choose that lifestyle.
In
And
your opinion, are all of them really homeless? So 220 sounds really high.
Yes, sir.
You believe they're all
The
homeless?
majority of those are, yes, definitely homeless.
Okay, how would you verify that?
Well, we look to see if they're carrying all their belongings on their back, or if they have a vehicle that's loaded top to bottom, and we have to actually certify that they are literally homeless. Now, we do get some people who are couch surfing, who are homeless. They stay in one place until they wear their welcome out. They get kicked out, and then they find a friend to stay with, as soon as they can. We do have some of those.
Yeah.
But vast majority of them are literally homeless.
But again, you would say that you get the numbers kind of indirectly. When you try to do an event for them to show up, where you have medical care and food and stuff like that, you just don't get a good count.
Well,
I
we
know
never
that. I
know.
visited, when you've done that, I visited those places.
Right. We're open 3 days a week at the Helping Hands House behind the First United Methodist Church, and we may get 5 people to show up. We may get 29 people to show up in one day. So we never know how many are going to come in any one day.
Mr. President.
Thank you, Ann.
Mr. President.
You have a question for? Go ahead.
Yes. Do you, trying to determine whether or not they're really homeless, do you ever check the property appraiser's website?
No, sir, I've not done that. But usually the word of mouth and the homeless is very strong, and we usually find out through one of the other. They'll tell us if they're not.
And this job, day labor thing, I can just give you one for instance. There's a gentleman, he's the same gentleman every day, got his spot staked out. For the last probably 6 or 7 months, he has sat across the street from a construction site, and where they need people over there picking up trash and carrying boards so forth. So I wouldn't put 100% faith in this day labor thing.
There are some who will jump on that opportunity to work.
I'm sure there are, you know, but there
The-
are
We're
some.
finding a lot of the homeless, a third of the people right now are women. It's not just men, it's a third of them are women, and the women count is growing higher and higher. And a lot of the people who come to us are disabled. And what the problem is with them is they cannot find affordable housing because they're getting $750 a month for their disability, and they can't find a place to rent, to pay the rent, the water, and the electric for $750. Yeah. They have to have money left to go to the doctor and buy medicine and food. So that we're running into that a lot.
Mr. Parker, you had a question?
Yeah, and I know you're doing so much, and thank you, dear.
You're
What
welcome.
type of working relationship do you have with the Crestview Ministerial Association and these homeless people? I know you're doing a great job and you're doing much to it. So explain that to us. What are you doing with the help of the Crestview Ministerial Association?
Well, the Ministerial Association is not very involved in what we're doing.
Right.
We would
Many
love.
people think it's solely by them, but it's not.
No, sir. There are only 2 churches who donate financially to our cause.
And basically, how many homeless people and the teenagers do we have in our city? You got a suggestion?
I do not know how many teenagers. It is rare that we get teenagers.
But we do have some.
We do have
I
some.
know for a fact.
Yes, we do have some. And some of them go through the Hope House.
Right. But I was in the city, Mr. President, let me say this. And through the Ministerial Association and the YMCA, they had it was a different state. They had a house downtown, almost in the center of town. Before town left and went to the outskirts of town. But they converted this house in and they would hold, and they was able to put in 42 bunks. And through 4 different organizations, they was able, and they would feed breakfast and sandwich at night, and worked out a work program from that thing. But it took a major effort. I mean, of everybody, and no half a dozen people cannot run that organization. But through this city council and the city and everybody in Crestview here, I hope we can do more for these homeless people.
Thank
I
you.
think
I'm
that's
glad to hear
that's
that.
the whole concept of the coalition.
That is correct. Makes a coalition for that.
They would have to do that. Mr. Faircloth, you look as though you have.
Yes, I was asking for, do you operate off of strictly donations, or do you have funding?
Off of donation, and we get $30,000 from the federal government.
Okay, would you like
For
to
the
tell
year.
us how to donate? Address or website?
Yes,
or-
you can donate by sending it to 428 McLaughlin Avenue, Crestview, Florida, 32536. Address it to Crestview Area Shelter for the Homeless. If you just want to put CASH, that's the acronym.
Crestview what?
Crestview Area Shelter for the Homeless.
Could you spell the name of that street, please?
MC, capital LAUGHLIN.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thank you for what you do. I spent a lot of time with Ann when I was studying this year or so ago. It's been a while. I'll just kind of summarize things a little bit because some other notes that leapt out at me. In the report, they said Crestview's numbers decreased to about 55 last year. And I know for a fact that that's based on the counts that we do that are really inaccurate. We were up definitely over 100 when I was studying the program over a year ago. Interesting note was that nationwide reports say communities spend up to $40,000 a year to cover the needs of keeping the people's homeless. And that is when you start looking at the medical costs, public defenders, jail, police time, shelter, food, emergency room visits, and all those kind of things. In fact, the nearest one I could find, Pensacola, estimates they spend between $20,000 and $35,000 a year for each homeless person they have in Pensacola. So basically what it's saying, it's an investment of the city. You might be saving money by having a program. And again, I'm not advocating that we in the city council get involved in running a homeless shelter, but helping to create a coalition to do something about the problem here. The other thing I noticed on page 6, they said that the town business owners want police to prevent the following from occurring: public urination, defecation, which we certainly have suffered here in Crestview; aggressive behavior, we've seen that; aggressive panhandling, we've seen that; public drunkenness and intoxication by chemicals, I'm sure we've seen that; loud, unruly behavior, and fighting. The one thing that's missing on this list, I believe, is mere presence. And that is the complaints I get from store owners, okay, is that even if an individual is not causing a problem, if they're staying in front of my business and somebody drives up, it discourages them from coming into my business. They say they don't want to be, they think they might be confronted, or they don't want to have to deal with that. So instead of ever getting out of their car, they say, okay, they just drive away. That's the complaint I hear, and that's primarily Main Street because we're near where we have a lot of homeless people here. But that's missing from the list, and I think it does have a negative impact.
Mr. President?
Yes, go ahead,
If I
Mr.
could mention about the downtown area, we've met with the merchants down there a few times, and they brought up these issues to us. Now, I talked to Commander Grant that this new patrol that we're putting down there, and soon will be a bike patrol or foot patrol, that person is going to be directed to become knowledgeable, have on a first name basis with everyone that's down there every day. And they have to build a sense of trust between them that they don't run in the opposite direction. But that person is going to be responsible for trying to guide those folks away from those storefronts if they're just loitering. Now, we may have to look at some of the ordinances that we have to back that officer up. We're going to be very careful about violating anyone's rights. Everyone has a right to be downtown. And, but we're going to work on those, and this officer that we're going to choose is going to have a mighty big job. And we have to pick someone with a type of temperament to work with the homeless, understand their plight, and to try to direct them in the right, put them in the right direction. This person is going to be knowledgeable, try to be knowledgeable, working with Ann and the other folks about the different agencies that are available for them, where they can go for some help. And hopefully, this will not happen overnight, but hopefully that we can start putting a dent into the problems that the merchants are facing downtown with this. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Councilman Hayes.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. In relation to what the mayor was just saying, I was thinking after I looked at this, and on Martin Luther King, there's a substation there that, in my opinion, is not necessary. Might with the chief and find out, but there's a building sitting there that's a substation, and I'm probably sure it might have been adequate at the time. Right now, I don't think there's a need for that. I would have to, we'd have to discuss it with the chief, but we might look at a possibility of moving that substation there, which is a single wide or double wide?
It's a single way.
Single wide that's sitting down there on Martin Luther King, which there's no businesses or activity that I'm aware of that's going right there along that section right now, other than a few people use it as a get-together on a couple of places, sit around and talk, and I don't know what they're doing other than talking, because I don't go up there and ask them. But that's a possibility. We might look at moving that towards town somewhere, where that would be in the area of downtown, and it would be a presence where they would know it's a building there, and also whoever is doing patrol would have a place to stop and do reports or whatever. Just a consideration.
When the mayor and I met with the ISP, we actually discussed that. What can we do by putting a substation in Main Street? So that might be a good alternative. But you see where we're going with this. This is not it's like a two-edged sword, and that is you have to come from the helping side, but you also have to come from the enforcement side too. So you got to protect businesses and our citizens, but like the mayor was saying, believe it or not, you have a right to be homeless, and so we can't take that right away from someone. Just a couple other things that in a summary that I wanted to note. When I started looking at it, the thing I started saying was, well, you know, we need a homeless shelter. Well, I will tell you, the thinking of the homeless people in Okaloosa County, that's a bad thing. And here's a recommendation from the committee that did this study. A full-time shelter with no homeless resource center attached is not a recommendation of the ISP committee. So if you're going to do a homeless shelter, you have to make a resource center attached to it, so you have full services of some type. They also noted cold night shelters. You need them, and they might save lives, but they don't usually have showers and laundry facilities, and that's what Ann provides over there in the building that the church allows her to use. From a good note, they said Mr. Monk, who's over there with the program in Fort Walton Beach, said that by November 2017, they've graduated 14 men to permanent housing. So the program they're doing down there is working. That's your goal, not to provide them a place to remain homeless forever, but to graduate them to permanent homes, if that's what they want. And some people, I know they don't want that. The recommendations they made, who should be on the coalition, I like their recommendations. Crestview Police Department, Crestview Area Shelter for the Homeless, CASH. Crestview's faith-based community, absolute crucial partner. When I was doing this, I counted the number of churches we have in the greater Crestview area. That counts Laurel Hill and Baker. 95. 95 churches in the greater area. Now, that doesn't mean all those churches are large and can afford to contribute to the program. But my guess is if you took the 10 largest churches, and we have some pretty big ones here in Crestview, and got them involved in a coalition, you could have some pretty good financial backing. They recommend a member from One Hopeful Place in Fort Walton Beach might serve on our committee to advise us. The Okaloosa County Code Enforcement, the Okaloosa County Sheriff's Department, Okaloosa County Administrator's Office, CRA, Chamber of Commerce. Again, Chamber of Commerce, when I met with the people in Fort Walton Beach, the city manager, Michael Beatty, he told me they could not have done what they did without the Chamber of Commerce being involved. And so we need to do what we can to get them involved. Let me go back to some more of my notes. Strategic plan, we talked about that. Just a couple of notes in today's newspaper, just flipping through the newspaper, a printed copy, which I know nobody does anymore, but I do. People live and die in the Walmart parking lots. Walmart is very friendly, not just the homeless, they're very friendly to people parking in their parking lots. If you have an RV and you go in the backside of our Walmart, you park there and nobody's going to harass you. And what they're saying is the homeless understand that. So if they're lucky enough to have a vehicle, they will park there, and they know they have access to a bathroom. They can go in. If they need break from the heat, they can go to the air conditioner. If they need break from the cold, they can go into the heat. But unfortunately, sometimes the Walmart people go out there and they discover dead people in the cars because they were living there and didn't make it. So anyway, that was in today's newspaper. And then on Channel 10 News today, they said that the Mobile was thinking about creating a tent city, which was raising kind of eyebrows with the public, which I can understand now. We didn't live in St. Pete. We lived in Tampa Bay. But St. Pete created a tent city, I think back in 2007, and they eventually disassembled that. It turned out to be more than they could handle. So I don't know. Obviously, I don't know the answers. But all I'm asking for tonight is we, as elected officials, if we believe that we have an obligation to try to form a coalition of citizens and faith-based community and come up with a committee and a plan of what we can do. Is that something that you want us to pursue? Is it something we all agree that we can do or should try?
Should try. We gotta try something.
You go on that?
Yeah.
Okay, that really was the basis of our workshop. And what I'm going to do now is to move up the comments from the audience a little bit early. So if anybody from the audience would like to comment on this discussion right here, please come on up, identify yourself by name and address, and share with us if you would.
I am one of your homeless.
Oh, welcome.
Thank you. My name is Sandra Smith, so I'm gonna try not to be emotional, Mr. Cadle.
It's okay, take your time.
A lot of the things that you've brought up and that you've discovered are a lot of great ideas, and the coalition, I believe, is a good idea. But from somebody that's, and I don't want this to sound the wrong way to you, Mr. Faircloth, okay? Not all of us are standing around with signs. And yes, there are people that choose to live that way, but a lot of us that spend some time with Miss Ann are people that don't want to be homeless. We've had situations that have occurred in our lives. I've been homeless since the 3rd day of May, and my son and I live in my car. Most of the time, we do have some friends that let us come in to shower from time to time, so it's a wonderful thing. Understand too, the facility that Miss Ann and a lot of the people that work with her have, there is one shower. You get a shower once a week because there's just, you have to limit by the amount of space that they've been able to provide and the amount of time and the 1 load a week of laundry. A lot of the churches want to donate like clothing and things like that, and it's wonderful. Anybody wanting to give anything to somebody else is always a wonderful and gracious thing. But that's not of a benefit at this point. When you're dealing with a lot of us that go to Helping Hands, there are charities that have come into play that are trying to help with maybe getting you approved for a deposit or a first month of rent to a place to get you back into your home and have you working. And there are a lot of, like my son does work. So I'm trying to get approved with Social Security right now, and anybody knows dealing with those type of agencies takes an extended period of time. I lost my job because I had back-to-back heart attacks, couldn't sit in their chair for them, and hey, they're like any business, they need an employee that can do their job. So those kind of things happen, so you have to try to move forward and go in that direction. Showers, if you get a job, you can't show up at a job dirty and smelly and stinky. If you had an employee that showed up, you hired somebody and they came in and looked like they've been rolling out in the mud like the dog that got out last night, you wouldn't want them there either. So those are concerns. And food, of course. There are a lot of the churches that do donate food, but there are a lot of the larger churches that do not participate in any of that. But one of the biggest thing that we have come across is in this city, 2 things I would like for the city council to look at for us. First of all, that the majority of the agencies that can provide help are in Fort Walton Beach, and they hold them down there. For me, I don't have a vehicle that can drive to Fort Walton Beach, so I don't have a way to get to that. So those agencies, it's not a fair play to south part of Okaloosa County to north part of Okaloosa County. And understand they're trying to look at numbers to say, hey, there's only this many people and we have this many, because they have more of the agencies to be able to track. I don't know that we all need a tracker on us, but I understand the concern of trying to find out how many of us might be dealing with these situations. But the cost of rent in this city is ridiculous. There is actually a trailer on the south part of town that is listed for $500 a month that doesn't even have all of its windows. Okay? Because we have military, and I was prior military. Now, just because that military gets a housing allowance doesn't give free rein for a city's people that have properties, whether it be a house or an apartment complex, to go, hey, they have a housing allowance of an average of this, so let's take this that's probably valued at about $500 and let's make it $920. Currently, right now, there are 2 places for rent. If you go to multiple websites that are like $700 to $720, everything else is $920 $2,600. I haven't seen a house in this town, there's some beautiful homes here, that I think you should rent for $2,600 a month. But because they believe that they can get it, then they're going to do it. So what that creates for us, those of us who don't have that large income as of now, you have jobs where people are making $10.50, $11.50 an hour. There aren't that many full-time jobs in this town. Most of it's like 32, 35 if you're a hard worker and can get those. So you start figuring up, if you make $11 an hour and you get 32 hours a week, and then you take your taxes out, and then your rent's $720 if you were lucky enough to make that much. That doesn't count your water. Average water bill, if you're in the city, can be from $75 to $85, depending on how much water or sewer you may have used. Then you have an electric bill. Well, when you're living in a rundown building that doesn't have proper installation, you don't have a $120 power bill. You got a $100 to $250 power bill. And then if you have a washer and dryer, if you're blessed enough to have those and not have to go to the laundromat to do a tiny load at $2 a load, if you have that. Most of us don't have enough of clothes to last an entire month. So when you start figuring in the average cost of living for somebody who's trying to get themselves back on, they're not unwilling to work. And the place you were talking about working is there used to be, it was like a ready rent kind of thing. I actually did a job out of there and worked down in Fort Walton and bust tables for a military event. It's in Fort Walton Beach now. They shut their branch here. Okay. But that was great because you could go and work for a day or work for 2 days if they wanted you, so it was a way for you to have work. But those things, I think, are things that would like the city to address. We need to look into maybe what the property value and why everybody's just running. I know a person has a right to rent for whatever, but if there was affordable housing in this town, I don't know that a shelter or a tent city is a solution to the majority of people that are wanting to better themselves and get off that homeless part and not return back to it. It's an opportunity to have decent, affordable housing and more opportunities in work other than maybe a hamburger place or something like that in our city. You know, a lot of us grew up here. We don't want to have to leave to survive. You want to stay in your city of Crestview and support that, you know. So that was what I wanted to share with you. I hope I didn't ramble too much and take too much time.
And we appreciate that. I think those are the kind of things that this coalition is going to have to look at, because that was mentioned, that we didn't go into all the details. One was, could we supply transportation to the south part of the county where there are other services? Can we explore additional HUD housing? Those kind of things that coalition would have to look at. But anyway, we appreciate you sharing that with us, ma'am. Any other comments from the audience? Okay, we are going to move on to 6B. We have some budget issues that Madam Clerk wants to talk to us about.
Not really budget issues.
Something I'm sure very short and sweet.
You got it. I got high heels on, I guarantee it's gonna be short and sweet. Just a couple of things, from those of you that I've met with, the factors in the budget for this year, is fortunately if the sales property exemption passes, it will not take effect until next year, yay. The budget for property taxes that I estimated based on early projections, and early projections was off $10,000 from the actual, so I was feeling pretty good about that. In your notebooks, which all of you have, I've given you 4 options. And I'm not, that's it. I ain't doing more than 4 this year. Unless you really, really want something else. We've got no changes in personnel and no raises. We've got 3% for everybody. We've got all the requested personnel changes with no raises, and then we have all the personnel requests with no raises, with 3% raises. I am recommending, and I've taken out 3% on 10-1 because last year we discussed that the raises be done on their anniversary date. That was one of the agreements last year when we were talking about doing that. At the July meeting, there are several things you're going to look at. We're going to have, and I've sent them out to all the department heads, generalized evaluation forms that will be done this year. Those will not probably determine a raise for this year, but they will next year, or for 18-19, but they will for 19-20, because that will give everyone a year to build up, meet their goals, learn what they have to do to get a raise during the 19-20 budget. They'll tie in, and I'm going to sit down, police and fire have some very job-specific evaluations that they provided me with. So there'll be parts of those generalized evaluations that will not, they won't have to use because they're going to have the individualized ones. But we're going to sit down and work on those together. Also at the July meeting, we are going to have to set the millage rate. Now, those of you who've been around a few years, we can set the millage rate at whatever we want to set it on. And then we can take it down. But whatever we set it on, if something comes up, God forbid, a hurricane, and we have an issue, or we have an emergency, or we want to do projects and we want to do different things like parks and homeless situations, that's not an option in next year's budget. That is not an option in next year's budget. So we need to look at, our millage rate at this point is 6.9466. One millage rate gives us another $1.1 million in income because of the property values in the city of Crestview. Our property values went up approximately 9.1%, which is nice. But we will lose that next year if the property exemption passes. If the sales tax, and I know we're going to talk about the sales tax initiative in a few minutes, but if the sales tax initiative passes, we have a lot of projects that we can get done, and it will be for a 10-year period, not for a 5-year period. However, $1.5 million of our sales tax income is obligated for the next 5 years. So the most we're going to get first year, actually, we'll be behind the first year because it starts in January. If it passes, it starts in January. We get the Triumph funds. Everything's cool. First year, we only get $1.3 million in our fiscal year. So we're already going to be behind $200,000 going into the next year. So the first 2 years of sales tax, we will have no additional income if it passes because of the obligation to the Triumph funds, which is very necessary. We need to make our roads work. We need to make our roads work. After that, it could be anywhere of an additional $2 million a year. So what I need for you guys to do is what you have in front of you is the proposals with the anniversary date raises. Look at those. Our next workshop will not be until July the 23rd. Look at the budgets. Call me, come and talk to me. Go talk to the department heads and see what they've asked for as far as equipment and thing. And then at the July 23rd, we need to make some hard decisions about where we want to go. When you're looking at your numbers, your general fund projections do have $1 million contingency in them. And with the cash carry forward we're projecting, we are in the black in the general fund. Yay. We are in the black. Not by much, but we are in the black. In the utility fund, with our projected 2% raise next year, there is no contingency in it. And we are barely in the black in our utility fund. So that's an area we need to look at and consider what else we need to do. There are some options that we'll be talking about individually and then at the next meeting. And
Questions, comments?
Also at the July meeting, we'll be setting our first budget hearing, which will be September the 6th. So we need to, I hope to have it on a Monday night, but I cannot have it on the Monday night of September the 11th because that's the board meeting, school board meeting night, and we cannot have it the same night as the school board meeting. So I'm going to be around.
Comments?
Call me. Let's make appointments. Let's sit down and talk about everything.
Go ahead, Ms. Plucker.
Yeah, well, that's what I want to set up an appointment with you, Betsy. But I just went through figures and figures and figures and figures, and from 2017, 18, and 2019, my calculation, I came up with 131 categories that increased and 91 categories that decreased. Well, now, these have been verified and what have you from all department heads in every category for every dime is spent by the city. And we're still in the black, you say.
With our proposed cash carry forward, because for the last several years, we've been very, and the department heads will tell you when Gina gets a PO and doesn't know what it is, she's very fast about calling and going, what is this? We have managed to put some money away in the general fund. And that's, last year we had to do cash carry forward. This year was the last year for the capital funds that we had in utility and general fund. We're using the capital funds for the new dispatch center. In the general fund, the utility funds, that's one reason we're semi-okay in the utility fund, and we have $465,000 left in that we can use for part of the PJ Adams utility move. That has to be spent by October 1st. It doesn't have to be obligated by October 1st. It can't be on this is what we want to do with it by August 1st. It has to be spent by October 1st.
And that amount, again?
It's about $1.1 million in utility and $100,000 in general.
Right.
We still have we have another $465,000 from the second refunding. It has to be spent by January of 19, and that's what we've put aside for the utility move. If we don't move the utility move, then we'll pay for something else with the $465 and put that other money aside for the utility move for PJ Adams.
Well, I'm still waiting on Mr. Steele to come up with his miracle for 2018.
Mr. Steele has already given me his miracles as far as this.
Okay.
He cuts his budget every year to make it balance, and he has done
You
it.
did a superb job, too. Thank you. That's all I have.
Anybody else? Let me understand this now. You said we're going to set the millage rate on the 23rd of July?
Tentative millage rate.
Okay, because we're not having a meeting before that.
No, we're setting it on July 9th. We're setting the millage rate on July 9th. I have to have it in by the 1st of August. This is just, all this is setting a millage rate that goes out in the trim notice. This isn't setting the millage rate.
I know what it is,
Yeah.
it's tentative, but still, so we're not having anything between now and that time.
But we can always go down, and I'll have all the,
I
you know,
understand, I know how it works.
but
Okay.
that's
I
only
wanna
2
make-
weeks, that's only 2 weeks away. So
I
there's
wanna
not a
make-
whole lot of time to have another meeting.
I don't want to make this a budget workshop, but I do need to look at, do you have your charts there?
Mhm.
Would you look at, when you look at the general fund and you look at the expenses without any raises,
Mhm.
and then you look with raises and it goes up. You get on the utility fund and you look at personnel requests with no raises, and then you look below it and you put a raise and the amount goes down.
There
I
are
don't
some
understand
items,
that.
there was 2 areas in Mr. Steele's department. The first 2 are based on what we're sitting on right now. He sent me some recommendations and it eliminated 2 positions, that's why.
I cut my budget. I cut.
What do you-
But they would have been eliminated in the upper category too.
They can be, but
Could be.
that wasn't presented. That was presented as part of
You know what I'm
the
saying?
personnel
Us
budget.
looking at it doesn't make any sense. This is how much you expend, and if you give a pay raise, you spend less money. Or take a pay raise any time.
Well, the reason for that is because everybody's positions went up and people are given more responsibility in the personnel changes, and they get the money along with that, and that's how he was
Okay,
able to
so
eliminate
we're
2
gonna- We're
positions.
gonna adjust that so it makes sense.
Well, no, if we don't give them the raises and the change in positions and the more responsibility with more money, then we won't be able to eliminate those 2 positions. A lot of these people are getting a step and a title raise in order to cover for those 2 positions that he's losing. If they're gonna stay at a lower rate of pay and no incentive for doing extra work, then he won't be able to eliminate.
All right,
Right.
we'll see at the budget hearing. Okay, thank you.
Just keep in mind, we gotta do this July 9th, so not just the tentative millage in the budget hearing.
All right. And I think Councilman Hayes, you want to talk about the sales tax initiative resolution?
Thank you, Mr. President. As you may or may not know, I'm the president of the Okaloosa County League of Cities at the present time, composing of the 9 cities here in Okaloosa County. What I have is a resolution, not from the city of Crestview itself, but the resolution is basically coming from the member cities of the Okaloosa County. What I'm looking for is a consensus from the city to go along with the council's proposal, resolution, to send to them as a resolution concerning the levy of the half-cent sales tax. Now, as you know, they've already approved that with us, but what they did was, it was on a 5-year plan. Based on what their observations and looking at that, they want to go with a 10-year plan, and me personally, I strongly support that. So what I'm looking for is consensus from the body here, so that when we submit a resolution, if it's my majority of the cities, that there's a voice behind that saying we approve this. Now, I had Mr. Steele give me some projects towards what this extra 5 years could do. And Ms. Roy's already stated that the first year, we're looking at 1.35 million from that, which we are supposed to pay $1.5 million if the half-cent sales tax. If the half-cent sales tax doesn't pass, that means you bypass, you can kiss goodbye, because it's not going to happen. So that's one of the main things. If the citizens do approve that, which is a half-cent on a dollar, and for you math geniuses, you can tell me how much you'd have to pay to get, $10 extra tax from that. Probably 40% of that be coming from your tourists anyway that pass through here. But why I'm strongly in favor of this, and hope that my fellow councilmen will agree to go for the 10 years instead of the 5. Mr. Steele gave me an outlay for the next 5 to 10 year project, and the basic estimated costs on that, and the things that we could do, considering that we're obligated for $8 million if the half-cent sales tax passed towards the bypass on one side of town, not the other half. That's another thing, because we're looking at basically, if I'm correct, $200 million to do that one half bypass, which is, with Crestview donating $8 million, that in the county, what, 40 million, and others from
FDOT 96 and Triumph 64.
Right. That's all that's based on that half-cent sales tax, and I'll talk about that maybe in another meeting, but that's not the one. But with the project that Mr. Steele gave me, and he might elaborate on them if you have any questions. He has on there one of the projects, and it's 13 projects on here, and some of them aren't fully funded by us. One was enlarge the turn radius at Industrial Drive and Highway 90. That carries about $32,000 cost, which is no problem if we approve this. Crestview Corners Access Road, which we've been talking about for a while. There's 5 owners per se on that, and we only have approval from 2 of them to do that, but that's a $150,000 project. Redstone area widening State Road 85 to Brookmead, and the roundabout construction at Redstone and Brookmead intersection. That's about $900,000. Now, you may or may not be aware, but Medcrest to Dugan Connector Road, which is one of the projects on here. I'm sure some of y'all may or may not know where Medcrest is, behind the 3-story medical center back there. They got a nursing home, and they're going to build some. Dr. Alabato's going to put a medical eyeglass place there. But when you loop behind the medical, come by the grocery store, Publix, and you go around that way, and you turn. They want to cut the proposal is that for the city to cut a road over, and we're doing this trying to alleviate traffic, is to cut back, make a connector road to Dugan, which runs by the credit union. Now, the plans for that would cost $2 million almost. 900, and then Millcrest connector. No, that's a $2 million project. I want to get y'all confused. And then we're looking at paving Arena Road. I think y'all might know where Arena Road goes by the waste disposal, but right now it's dirt. But looking at doing that, and doing that would be in 3 phases. It's quite expensive to do that section there. $2 million to do phase 1, $1.5 million to do phase 2, and $3.5 million to do phase 3. Now, with that being said, another $2 million to do Dugan Road extension to Arena Road. If you may or may not know where Dugan Road ends, it ends right there past really my brother's church, and then it hits the woods. And there's a little stream or something back here if you want to go for a good walk. There's a little stream back here. But that would go all the way across over to Dugan Road, Arena Road, which would provide some alleviation from the traffic. That's one of the proposals. That's $2,555,000, and the firing range, which is minimal, $100,000. Everybody know about, we've been talking about the Raspberry Road, and that would be with the county, so I didn't include that in our total. We got on here a sports complex for about $14 million. That's including the land in there, and the environmental center, which is going to be taken care of anyway, so we could include that. If we can get the resolution and get this, our citizens past this, we could get a large portion of these projects done within the next 10 years or less for Crestview, which would alleviate the problems. Considering that the county wants to go with the 0.5% anyway, they first said 5, but when they start looking at other projects, while getting the projects, what they will do, which would help the county overall, that it would be in the best interest of the city, in my opinion, that we approve this for a 10-year project, considering it's only 0.5%. Now, if it was for more, 2 or 3 cents, then I would definitely be against it. But for that right there is basically what I'm looking at, Mr. President. And what I like to have really is the consensus from Crestview that they would approve the 10-year so that we can add their names, Crestview's name, to the ones who approve the 0.5 cent sales tax for the additional 5 years. So that's what resolution that I would like to present to the county once I get the approval of the cities. And that's basically it, Mr. President.
All right, thank you.
Anybody have any
Comments?
questions or comments?
Only, I think if people would realize just how little this is gonna cost, what is it, every $1,000, what is it, $5? Or is it 50 cents? You math people. I think it's $5. Now, I told somebody, yesterday, if you're going to buy a car and they tell you that they're gonna have to charge you another $5 for the taxes on this, car or whatever, would you not buy it? Over $5. So really, it's not gonna hurt anybody that much. I'm in favor of it.
The only question I have, Mr. Hayes, is there not some disagreement in this council about the division of the sales tax money?
In this council or in?
No, in the Okaloosa County
County?
League of Cities.
Now, what we've discussed, and there was one city that was in opposition. And since the change of leadership there might be a change in the thinking there. And what we had did since, for the 0.5 cent, to be the smaller cities, Lar Hill, Baker, and I don't know what. Shalimar, that the allocated amount, and I didn't get into how the money would be distributed, but there's a formula they use, and it's based on population. Well, you know, the smaller cities, the population is really small, so they would, if you do it by population, they would really basically come out and get nothing. But we decided in the Okaloosa County League of Cities that we would give them more of a share, and we would take a reduced share so they would be able to get more allocated money to do things like Laurel Hill. You know, theirs would, like, whatever they're getting, I can't remember, but it would almost like double. And so that was that. But at our last time we discussed that, there was one city out of the 9 that was in opposition to this. And I don't know if that's changed. That's why we're looking.
Well, the reason I asked that, because I was at a meeting talking about sales tax in Fort Walton Beach a couple of weeks ago. And the proposal by one of the cities, of the 9 cities, was that they wanted the division of the sales tax based on contributions to the revenues from the city rather than population.
Yeah, now there was a discussion on that, and there
That's what I'm saying.
is a couple of cities that were looking at that, not, which would mean the county would be getting less, and the cities would be getting more. We never did get a consensus on which way to go on that, but it
I
has
just
been
wondered,
discussed.
I
And
heard
there
that
were-
discussion.
There were some people who thought it should be based one way and on that, and another way. And yeah, we discussed in our council meeting, league meeting on that, but no consensus about. The majority was still leaning, but we were talking about maybe trying to sit down with the county and negotiate. If they didn't say they want to do it that way, then we go by the formula that the state has set up. But we did discuss that.
Yes, Councilman Cox.
A couple of points there. I'm for this. And Councilman Hayes didn't mention the particular city that expressed opposition, so I'm going to leave that alone. But one of the statements was literal a few months ago was, we don't want to redistribute the wealth. So that was said. And under the proposed formula, it is based on population, and Crestview is the largest, most populous city in the county. It would be good for Crestview. And it would be fair and equitable based on population. Doesn't need to be complicated.
So what you're looking for, Mr. Hayes, what I heard you say, is just a consensus that we support the Okaloosa County League of Cities submitting this to the county? Is that
Right,
what
for the 10-year.
Yeah, for the
Absolutely.
10-year rather than 5 year.
Right.
I think what happened was that once the county sat down and looked at all the projects they had, they said there's no way we're gonna make much of a dent if we have it for only 5 years. And that's what they said, we're gonna repropose it for 10 years. That's what the referendum will say. And of course, the whole thing with the sales tax is that it is not any city imposing a sales tax on an individual. It's not the county imposing a sales tax. It's the county saying, we have all these infrastructure needs, we'll identify them. We can't do them without increasing the sales tax. What say ye? And then they make the decision, yes, we'll impose it on ourselves. No, we don't. That's pretty fair. So I have no problem with telling the Okaloosa County League of Cities if they want to send that resolution. Anybody oppose that? They have the right to do it anyway, but they don't want our support.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
That's, I don't think
I
that.
heard your support, yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Cox.
Additional point. I'd be okay with 10 years as you proposed. But if that doesn't fly, secondarily, 5 years would work, but 10 would be preferable. But you may have at least one other city out there that you're involved with to convince. Because this should be unanimous. This should.
It doesn't necessarily
This
have to
should
be
so
unanimous.
show-
It would be nice if Ms. Concept was unanimous, but if it's not, majority.
Okay, well then would you show the particular cities that say yay and those that say nay?
We would have the member cities probably, that are in favor of it. And it might be a line, I don't write these, I basically just look at them and approve them, but once they're written from, so they're legal and everything, I would have to get with the, I'm only one person on Old Lucy County League of Cities, so I can only speak for Crestview, but whatever they tell me. I can't speak for other cities, but I can suggest, and they would have to decide what their citizens want them to do, and I'm just bringing it to our citizens. Everybody else will bring their own citizens, and I can't say what they're gonna do. But unanimous, we're hoping for unanimous, but if we don't get unanimous, if we get majority, we'll list the cities who are in favor of it, and probably list the cities, I don't think it'd be in this resolution, the ones that don't approve, but it might be, I don't know.
Keep in mind, the city resolutions are separate from the League of Cities, and all 9 municipalities have passed a resolution supporting this.
Yeah.
The cities all have, all 9. The last one took place right before the last county commissioners meeting, and I think there were 2 on the council that opposed it, but it passed. The question I would have is that when we passed our resolution when it was based on 5 years, I don't know if we need to resubmit it at 10 years or support is support, you know.
I don't know, we'd have to ask legal, for legal advice on that, I would assume.
I don't believe Mr. Holly can address it, but our resolution has no legal binding, it is just showing support.
Support, yeah.
So.
Immaterial whether it was 1 year, 5 years, 10 years.
But it would not hurt to have it, to bring it out, and I would just rewrite it and bring it back to the next meeting for 10 years. I mean, it's no big deal.
I think to be safe, we ought to
I mean, the
recast
county's
it.
already passed it to be 10 years. It doesn't really matter what we say. It's gonna be on the ballot for 10 years. They're not gonna change it at this point. They've already passed their ordinance. It's just showing support that we're backing them up.
Right.
Yeah, you need to have it brought back in a regular meeting, because you can't pass resolutions in a
Yeah.
workshop.
Well, we'll put
Oh,
it on
no,
the
we're not
next-
gonna do it now, Mr. Holly.
Yeah, we'll put it on the July agenda.
Okay, and
So, do I hear that the city's gonna support, show support to the county for their tenure? Is that what I'm hearing, or I'm not hearing? I'm not asking for a new resolution.
no, but
right?
you're asking for support from the League of Cities, not the county.
Right,
That's separate.
from us, yeah, it's separate.
Yeah,
Just
I
from-
think what you're hearing, that we're supporting the League of
Okay.
Cities. That's what I haven't heard an objection yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, good. All right. All right, what I'd like to do is go around the room before we solicit the audience one last time, and start with the mayor. Do you have anything for us tonight?
Nothing more tonight, sir.
Councilman Fairclough?
Yes. If Ms. Teresa could offer any information about the abandonment of maypoles between 90 and Hickory, is that still in the air?
We're working on it. Matter of fact, we had a meeting today. So it's, we'll be getting the final documents prepared.
Councilman Hayes?
A couple of things, Mr. President, and one of them is a question to our, Ms. Gilliard relating to, people still ask me about chicken. If you can give us an update on the chicken. Popeyes.
Well, it's on its way. Unfortunately, it's in the hands of the FDOT. So they are, they've come back with the, requirement of having a common drive-through, the Whataburger drive-in. So, that's the last account I had of it, unless, Mr. Steele, did you receive anything after that?
No, I actually forwarded that information to you, and when we were having that conversation, it is unfortunate, but it's important for us to let the public know that it hasn't anything to do with the city. We're not holding it up. It has been and is still an FDOT issue with their driveway, because it does not meet their minimum standards of separation from that signal light to their driveway. In other words, it's too close. So they're not going to allow it, it didn't look like, and they're going to make them share the driveway connection with Whataburger. So they purchased the property between them and Whataburger, and they're now moving forward with redesign of that driveway.
Okay, thank you. And one other thing, Mr. President, just for basic information, I look at your dates and you've hit all the restaurants almost in town, everything, so I won't be at a restaurant. But right now, for August 27th, due to holidays and things like that, and me thinking that the closer to election time, the citizens will be more memory, their memory will be geared towards that more. So I've scheduled my first town hall meeting, August 27th at 7 p.m. It's going to be at the Carver Hill Center on School Avenue. I'm also scheduled to meet with a couple organizations. I'll get those out to you. Hopefully that if you decide you want to attend, you can, but I'm looking for my large turnout to exceed yours, hopefully on August 27th at 7 p.m. So I'm going to prepare and probably, but don't quote me on this, if there's fresh mints there, I'll probably provide them. I said, Mr. JB, he's been to every restaurant in town, so I'm not going to go to a restaurant. And we have to keep in consideration, because somebody said, why don't you have it at Warriors Hall? But I don't want to get into the thing about we're on public facility, because I'm going to be expounding on my viewpoint of why I think the charter is going to be one of the best things for our city and why we need it. So I don't want to be on city's property telling them why I'm in favor of it. I decided, I thought about some churches, since I know I can get in churches, but then I said, I'm not going to mention church and state related together. So I'm going to Carver Hill. And I'll be looking for all the citizens to be there for the information that Mr. Whitten has already given you. I'm going to be giving the same repeat, and there's probably some of the same reasons, and it's possible at the present time I have to confirm it, I'll be having at least one prior city manager down there for you to question him, and maybe two at the time. That's all, Mr. President. Keep that in date. August 27th, 7 p.m.
You'll have to discuss having a short meeting that night. That is workshop night.
7 p.m.?
No.
We're not
But
gonna
it
be-
is workshop. It
I
is
wanna
our
make sure our
it is
president
our
gets-
workshop night.
I'll make sure our president gets me out of here before I
That's
leave.
right.
A couple of things, Mr. Hayes, if you don't mind my commenting on, and that's, I understand getting real close to the voting the day before will keep it fresh in everybody's mind, but you have to keep in mind people early vote. A lot of people vote by mail and do early voting, and you're gonna miss all those people that vote early.
I don't think so.
Okay, I'm just
Well,
saying.
well, I understand
that's an
that.
option.
I did have one scheduled for July, but the date was getting pretty close, and I didn't have the information, but I might be able to, I can squeeze in, because I got a trip in July too, but, for a week. But I'll see about squeezing another day. That's a good
Yeah.
good thing on your part.
The other thing I would say
When's
that,
early start date, start by any chance, do you know?
well, no,
Early voting?
usually about 2 weeks before, if I remember correctly. Wait a minute, I might have it. I might just happen to have it.
That's just, that's a good point, Mr. President. I'm glad you brought that up.
The other thing I would say that if you have anybody, no, I don't have, I've got the voting dates, not the early dates. If you do have Councilman Cox or Fairclough or anybody else there, you have a public notice that there will be two city
yeah.
elected officials at the same meeting. You have to put a public, if you're gonna
Right.
do that. Otherwise, I would discourage anybody else being there. So you don't have to do that.
Anybody's welcome to come out. I'll get that notice out.
All right, Councilman Blocker.
Well, follow up what Brother Doug said a while ago, the Maypole's question. You asked my question, so I'll go to question number 2. Popeyes. 2 weeks ago, I met with corporate management and providing that the issue with DOT can be settled within the next 5 to 10 days, projected for opening Popeyes for VIPs, etc., is July the 17th. The public is July the 24th, providing the issue is settled with DOT.
2018 or 2020?
That could be either one.
Mr. President, may I make one quick comment on that?
Go ahead, Mr. Beardwell, I'm sorry.
I found out last week that the rumor around town is that Popeye's opening is delayed because the city refused their retaining wall.
Yeah, that's what Steele was saying.
I would just like that made public.
Mr. Beardwell, there are 10 reasons on Facebook, 10 reasons why Popeyes is not open. 10 reasons.
I would like to settle those rumors to let people know that it's not the city that's holding it up.
I counted them all. Were you done?
Absolutely. To my knowledge, there isn't one of those reasons that the city, we're in agreement with everything. They passed inspections and all.
You know, I'm just saying, you can
Right.
generate rumors left and right. Councilman Cox, yeah, please.
Yes, that's another reason why I'm not on Facebook. You can pull your facts right out of the air and pass them around. And the second thing is, I won't be in conflict with any other
Because you'll be out of town.
town. Yeah. So, but hope they're successful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Hall, you have anything for us?
I don't have anything.
Okay, Madam Clerk, anything else? Okay, start down there. Mr. Steele, we have anything?
One quick comment. I think that it's important what you approved when Mr. Hayes requested tonight because of the list. One reason is simply we just mentioned, I get beat up on Facebook all the time, and I think some of you will realize that.
Really?
And we've learned to have thick skin and realize that people don't have knowledge of these issues that they're speaking about. If they did, they would change their viewpoints. They would realize how inaccurate they are. And one of those things is the sports complex. And I did some research because I just got beat up over it for 2 weeks. And I forget how many thousands of comments and views there were about that and why we don't have one and where our money or funding goes for this. And we own hundreds of acres to build one. I don't know where those hundreds of acres are that we own, first of all. But I looked at the sports complex in Fairhope, for example, and that's where this one particular party was at. And Biloxi area, Gulfport, and Mississippi, they have a few of them over there. These are all new. Well, the one over in Foley, they have a bed tax. They increased their bed tax from 3 to 7% to pay for this, and their portion or contribution on the city side was $10 million. But the overall cost of the entire project was almost $200 million once it's going to be built out. They're tying in with a much grander project. In other words, it's over 200 acres. Now, just the sports complex portion though was only it was 30 or 40 acres. I don't quote me on that. It was right. It was maybe I have that. No, it was 20 to 30 million for that, and it was 80 to 100 acres. That's
you
correct.
And I sat down. We said
Yeah.
100 acres is about the minimum we could do.
Well, I read that, and we had the ISP do the study for us. You know, the same, and they made that recommendation. We need 80 to 100 acres to accomplish that. And I just think it's important that we have that list to show the public. If they want a sports complex, here's a way to achieve that in the future by approving that half-cent sales tax and it be identified as one of the future projects. That way maybe they will see where the funding can come from and how they can help to make it come to fruition and become a reality rather than just something to fuss at us about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commander Grant, you have anything for us?
No, sir.
Marie? Chief?
Just want to mention that this Saturday at Winn-Dixie from 12 to 4, they're having a family day. We're going to be having out there, we're going to have our fire truck out there, the smokehouse, inflatable smokehouse, and also introducing a new member of our public education, which is from Paw Patrol, Marshall. We actually obtained Marshall for us to help out with kids. That seems to be a huge hit with the kids. They don't really know Sparky anymore, so we went with Marshall. But they'll be out there at the Winn-Dixie this Saturday for the Family Day from 12 to 4. So if y'all want to come out and take a look and just support the fire department, it'd be good to see you guys.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Gaylor, do you have anything for us? Really? Okay, I'm going to call from the audience now. Anybody in the audience would like to come and speak to your city council this evening about any topic? Anybody from the audience? You're all getting tired, you want to go home, is that it? Well, in that case, this meeting is adjourned.